crazy, but I didn't know you would.
How did it run after that, Cat?
It helped it. It didn't spin as much coming off the turn.
Welcome to another high-octane episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast of Southern Dirt Motorsports. Today we have with us again Mr. Rocky Estes, which is a very, very prominent racer. He's come from a historical racing family. We're proud to have him with us again today to tell us some more stories and share his life of racing. With me today, I have Jeff Walker and Mike Luna as helping host this, and I'm Randall Davis. And Rocky, tell us a little bit now about your racing career, where you got started in your career.
Well, I started, like I said before, up at Ashway in the jalopy division, and it didn't turn out real well.
And what track was this at?
At Ashway Speedway. They call it the cow pasture because through the week, Mr. Hillard owned the racetrack. He'd run his cows in the infield and everywhere through the week. Then he'd run them out on weekends and we'd race up there. And the cow pasture, you know, has usually got some bad spots. And it wasn't any different up there. But, you know, it's a good racetrack. And that's where I run my very first race. I was about 15 years old. And then I didn't race anymore for a few years. Probably when I was about 16, 17 years old, I talked to this guy and let me drive his modified up at Knoxville Raceway. And
where was Knoxville Raceway?
it was north of Knoxville up toward Union County. It's a little asphalt racetrack.
Okay.
Daddy won every race he run up there for 7 years. And so, you know, then I go up there and that's where I started racing. And, you know, I had a little bit of success. I didn't really mess up that bad. And finished decent, won some meet races and consies and stuff. And so then when I was about 18 years old, I got another ride with another guy. And it was a good car. And I won my first race at 411 in that modified. And Daddy and H.E., Little Bill. It was a special big race, they called it back then, because it was on Tuesday night. And all the modifieds from Tazewell and 411 got together that night, and we all raced.
Was 411 paved then?
No, it was dirt.
It was dirt, okay.
Yeah, and it was short track, little short track thing.
Yeah.
And I won the race. And, you know, Daddy was the first one over to me when the race was over. And then I struggled from there for a few years. And I got a ride with Vanover, James Vanover, out of Harriman, that Billy Ogle made famous, or he made Billy famous, one of the two. But I drove for him and won a race at Atomic in his car.
This was late model car.
Yeah, that's a late model by then. First late model race I drove was at 411, and this car had a windshield on a dirt track. That don't go well. Yeah. And but anyway, and we come down here at Sparta once when I was driving for James. I don't remember where, but we was down here. I just remember coming to Sparta and went up Demery. If any of you remember Demery up La Follette. I doubt it, but you might. It's up on top
I haven't heard of it.
It's up on top of a mountain.
Jack Smith used to race it there. Yeah.
Oh, it was bad. And Pine Knot, Kentucky. That was another racetrack that they called. And but anyway, I ran up there with Vanover, and we had a little bit of success. And then I moved around several cars, and then I ended up in the P7, and I won 11 straight features at Atomic. Won the Tennessee Dirt Track Championship at Atomic. Won some races at Tazewell. I ran second to LD up at Newport one night. Should have beat him. Lap car about put me in the wall, or I'd have beat him that night. He was having a lot of problems there toward the end of the race.
Was that a Howe chassis car?
Yeah, fourth design. The first one was. Then we got a fifth design the next year. And so had a lot of success in the P7 in '82. In '83, we got a fifth design Howe car.
Now this guy was from Kentucky.
And he was Al Pointer out of Corbin, Kentucky. on the car. And he built a new car, and they was running the NDRA race down there. And Tom Helfrich had been at Corbin on Thursday night in a 5th Design Hal car. And Hal went down there and camped out with him and learned a lot and changed everything on the car. Well, they built the 5th Design over the winter in the Hall of Fame race, and he quit. I told him how the motor was going, but because his car shook, and they took it back and couldn't find anything wrong with it. So anyway, Al changed everything on the car from Thursday night to Friday night at the Tommy. And I went out to qualify, and it quit running again. And I still qualified 15th out of about 60 cars. And so they took car home Friday night, worked on it, brought it back Saturday night. Started on front row with Rodney Combs. And I was sitting there in the car, and I worried about, this is Rodney Combs. It's a big deal. And then I was laying there, and I thought, I'm already beat the best race car driver in the country. I'm going to beat my daddy. So I went off to sleep, slept good. So me and Combs started on front row the next night. Excuse me. And they dropped a green flag, and I had a half straightaway lead on Combs. He quit running. And we had a big enough lead on 3rd place car that I still run 2nd. So they took car home again Saturday night. Worked on it, brought it back Sunday. They found the problem. When they put the fuel cell together, they put too much silicone around the gas tank, and it stopped up the fuel pump, or it stopped up the gas line. So they put an electric fuel pump on it, but they didn't take the fuel pump off. So they dropped green flag in the feature, and the car quit again. And it pumped that silicone up and stopped up the fuel pump, so it couldn't get any gas. So that was probably my biggest disappointment, in that race, because I honestly think I could have won the race Sunday. The car was that good.
These cars that he's talking about, Randall and Mike, you may have even had a car.
I had a 3rd Design Hal. Yeah.
Ed Howe started building these tube chassis cars, and they were very unique and, of course, ahead of their time. And at that time, he had the pipeline car, Larry Moore drove.
Yeah.
At that time, Gone, and Rodney Combs drove it.
Yeah.
Was that the one that you raced against then?
Yeah.
And he had another car too. I can't remember.
He kept changing.
Dirt.
He kept changing his number.
Dirt, maybe.
And let Larry Moore drove it.
Yeah,
Larry
the
Moore brought the
car.
ugliest race car you ever saw down there.
And set it on the pole.
It was green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
That's
ugly.
why he done that.
Yeah.
That's why Hal done that.
He blistered everybody in.
Yeah.
Well, Hal was one of the first. He was one of the forerunners of guys building chassis that you could go buy, and he would reproduce A-frames and such. If you wrecked one, you could go buy one just like that. So he was a forerunner.
Yeah.
That's the reason the Rayburn cars had stronger than dirt, because that dirt car was a fast race car.
Yeah. So, but so we rocked along there. That car, we brought it back, and I was coming off 4, and
what track was
this
this?
is Atomic. I was coming off 4, and I was on the wood crank, standing in it. And next thing I know, I'm pulling my helmet off. I hit the wall coming off 4, wide open. Never got out of the accelerator. And so while I'm sitting there, the steering wheel's moving around. I can do anything I want to. It's like, tilt steer wheel. And where it went down, the knuckle turned to go to the rack and come apart, broke. And it just turned right into the wall. And Al Walker come running up the car, and he said, "You all right?" And I said, "Yeah, the steering broke." And he said, "I said, are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, but the steering broke." And he was about 6'3" or 4. He said when I hit the wall, he could have walked under the back. And I was more worried about him being mad at me turning up in the race car.
Atomic was a very fast 1/3 high banked racetrack, and it drew all the big competition. And Michael, that's where you got your start, wasn't it, Mike?
No, I raced there, but I started actually at Sparta, Jeff. But I raced at Atomic in probably '85. That's where I got my super start.
Okay.
It was fast.
Yeah, it was fast. And that night you're talking about Larry Moore, he said that he went out there and I think that's the first 10,000 race ever, maybe ever, but I believe it's for around here for sure. It's 10,000 wins. And Larry went out there and qualified on the pole and said, Ed got mad at him, told me he just about wrecked his car.
It was ugly though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he meant for him to be. That's the thing. He'd change numbers and everything.
Yeah.
Well, Rocky, during your career, and you might have just told us about it, I don't know, what was probably your most memorable event that you've had at a racetrack? And when you're sitting around thinking about some of the things you've done, what is the one that pops into your mind quite often?
I was down at Atomic one night, and I was driving the B-class sporting, whatever you want to call it, and Lester come over to me. And the guy was driving his car, and he brought him with him. Lester said, "Will you drive my car?" And I said, "What's wrong? Why don't he want to drive it?" I won't mention any names, but because he's a good guy. And he says he can't drive it. And I said, "Yeah, I'll drive it." So I went over and climbed in. First lap base qualifying, and I qualified 17. And the car didn't have power steering. And I'm an old fat man now, but then I was in pretty good shape. And they dropped the green flag, and the longer we run, the faster that car got. And I got up to 4th in it. And but if they hadn't had cautions when they did, I don't know what I've done, because I couldn't breathe when the caution come out, because that's the hardest steering race car I've ever drove in my life. And I got up to 4th. Well, I got spun out. The guy got a little mad at me because I used him up a little bit against mine. And he spun me out.
That's putting it really nice. You're real good on that.
And so I had to go back. So I come back up there, and I got back up to 6th. But I really believe I could have won that race. And starting 17th would have been an accomplishment. And then that one, and the NDRA race, and the Tennessee Dirt Track Championship, but still racing Daddy that night had to be number 1.
I can only imagine what that would have had to be like.
Yeah.
And the accident that you just described, was that the hardest one you had, or have you had a more spectacular one than that?
That one hurt real bad, but I had one over Smoky Mountain before they shortened the racetrack. It was a big half-mile high bank. It was fast. And the guy in front of me blew a motor, well, about halfway down the back straightaway. When I pulled out to go around him, he pulled down, which is what he should have done. But I jumped his left front wheel, my right rear. And I fought the car all the way down in the corner to keep hitting anything. Well, I didn't hit anything, so I thought I'd done pretty good. And I looked up, and the caution lights was on. I reached down, turned the switches off, and I looked back up, and I thought, he's going to hit me. He did. He hit me, and they said the car jumped up off the ground, started spinning around and around. Well, it landed about the middle of 3 and 4. And I opened my eyes, because I didn't want to see what was going on. And my shield was gone. Knocked my shield off my helmet. And I looked up, and I thought, he's going to hit me. And he hit me. So I ended up, this wreck started down the backstretch, and I ended up coming off 4. And both hits hurt. So we had to take 2 wreckers to load the car.
Well, I assume all of you were all okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's always good.
Yeah. I never did get hurt, really hurt anyone. I was banged up, sore, and get your thumb every now and then. But other than that, that's about the repair job.
You can get hit hard enough that you can't see, but you're not really knocked out.
Right. Danny got a concussion out at Broadway Speedway one night, and they put him in the hospital. And they talked him and let him out Friday night, and told him he couldn't race, and he said, okay. He went to Chattanooga and won a 500-lap race. So, we're not really smart people.
It's just that you just want to do it so bad.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to race ever since I was a kid. And I asked Daddy one time, I said, what do you do in the accelerator race? Because he was done that night. He said, well, first thing you do is panic. He said, the second thing you do is you turn left and stand on the brake. And right after you've hit something, you remember to turn it off.
Well, what did you do when you weren't driving race cars? What did you do?
I worked for a national traffic control company out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I retired there after 42 years. So
That was quite a tenure.
Give us a list of car owners,
God.
if you can remember them all.
Was
I
the
can't remember.
Red 6, was that Lester's car?
Yeah, that's
Lester
Lester's,
Weeks.
yeah.
Well, he's a good man.
Yeah, he was. Like I say, Vanover, Joe Bibbins, Bobby Malk, Jim Salzman. Well, Bobby Malk and Jim Salzman was my modified days. And then, I forget who was it, car drove late model with the windshield. And then Jim Salzman, or guy drove for late model for Salzman again. I can't remember all their names. Al Pointer, Lester Weeks, Vanover, Tom, I forget what Tom's last name was. Drove another guy for Miller Plumbing Company out of South Knoxville. I drove for a lot of people.
When you were coming down here into Crossville in this area, who was you racing for then?
Lester.
Lester Weeks,
Yeah.
okay.
Lester, when I raced across from Baxter. In fact, come down here the first time, John Jones had won 3 in a row. And, well, he hadn't won 3 in a row the first time we come down here, but we come down here and race, and I told Lester, I said, we can win down here. And John won that night. That made us 3rd in a row. And I know y'all remember John, he was a good racer.
Yeah, man.
And so we went back the next Friday night, and they was having so many cars at Crossville at that time. It was the first year they run. They had run 3 heats.
That was the old 9-to-1 division.
Yeah, and you had to draw for the starting spot.
You'd have Bloomquist, Johnson.
Yeah, I mean,
all the guys down there
On
on
a
Friday
regular night.
Yeah.
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 And
That was some tough company.
yeah,
It was.
so I drew this that night and started on front row with John in a heat race, and I won the heat race, and so it put me on front row in the feature. I won it. And, John was the first one down there to congratulate me.
Yeah.
I mean, John was a good
This
guy.
kind of guy
He
was.
was.
I had a lot of respect for John Jones.
I did too.
He was a great racer,
Yeah.
but like you said, he was a great guy
Yeah,
also.
yeah. Well, all them guys down in Chattanooga were.
They were.
You got Ronnie and Skip and McDowell and Jack Harper and all that. I raced with Jack in the modifieds at Ice Wing 411 before he moved to Chattanooga.
Okay.
And but all them guys from down there in Chattanooga are good guys.
Back to the old Cleveland Speedway, it used to be so slick and everything. And Rex Ritchie, all them guys,
Yeah.
well, Joe, his dad, I mean, they had throttle control like nobody's
Yeah.
business. And it paid. And later on, when they went to these big races, those like Dale, McDowell, all them guys still, they still competitive and stuff. And
Yeah.
they grew up in Cleveland, Skip, like you say, Ronnie. And
Yeah.
of course, Ronnie's won the World Dirt Track
Oh, yeah.
Championship twice. And,
You won't find
still
a better
going today.
person
Yeah.
than Ronnie.
Great race car driver.
Yeah.
Fabricator.
Ronnie and Skip's probably the ones I know the best. And, they're 2 great race car drivers and 2 great people.
Yes.
You know.
Absolutely. Both of them still competitive
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Skip drove for Butch after Daddy. Well, there's 2 or 3 that drove, but he drove for Butch for a long time.
Yeah.
Butch ain't doing real good right now.
Really.
Was the 199 car, that was
That was-
Butch?
yeah,
That's Butch's?
Curtis, yeah.
Curtis Equipment.
Is that the last car that your dad
Yeah,
drove?
that's when he
Was
was
the
when he
199?
died. Yeah, Butch cleaned up the race car and the hauler and waxed them, and it led to his funeral. The race car did.
Well, I know your son raced. That's what made you a 3-generation racing family. Could you tell us a little bit about his career, what he drove?
Well, I bought these, what they call the classics. They were metric frames with 30 model bodies, fiberglass bodies, 305 Chevrolet engines with automatic transmissions. And we started up 411 on asphalt. And I made them start in the back. Every time they raced, him and my stepson both. Every time they raced, they'd start in the back. Heat race, they'd start in the back. Feature, they'd start in the back. And so finally about, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of the way through the season, I made them start back in the heat race, but I let them start where they finished in the feature. And so we went through that about half a year because I didn't want to mess up none of the guys, and wanted them to learn. So about halfway through the year, I let them, draw and start where they, supposed to. And so it went along there pretty good for the first year. And then the second year, when I had 2 cars, and they were racing, my son and my stepson. Well, they got together, went in the wall. both of them. And so we were going home, and I asked my stepson, I said, how them brakes work on that car? He said, I just put brakes on it. He said, oh, they work good. And I said, what y'all doing in the mall? He said, well, Rocky's still in the gas. And I asked Rocky, I said, what's you still doing in the gas? He said, well, you said if somebody gets into you, that they'll get off, just stay in the gas. And I said, when concrete starts flying, it's time to come out of the gas.
Well, how did it feel going from a driver of someone else's car to a car owner and watching your son drive one of them?
Watching my boys race was a lot more nerve-wracking than anything I'd ever raced. You know, it's scary. And, you know, they wasn't driving what we drove, and, you know, but it was still scary. I mean, you know, my boy would race go-karts. So, you know, he had a little more knowledge about it than my stepson did. But still, you know, it's scary watching them.
Was your dad real knowledgeable about cars and stuff, the setups and stuff? I've heard a story about Buck Simmons one time, and the guy said he used to call him and ask him, because he always won.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, tell him what he thought his setup was, and he said, I'd be back here in the back running and think, well, Buck Simmons don't know. He's just a heck of a race car. You said your dad adapted, you know.
Yeah.
How about you? Were you knowledgeable about the cars and stuff?
No. You know, I'd go to the garage and help, but I just do what they told me to do.
A guy used to drive for my dad, Johnny Jack, and he would just say, it's broke, fix it.
Yeah. Well, you know, Daddy drove for people over in Carolina and Georgia, so he never was around the cars except at the racetrack.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I never was either because I worked full time, you know, had 2 kids, and, you know, so I wasn't around the racetrack or cars that much. And so I'll just always depend on them.
Sometimes it's good not to know how much can fall off on
Yeah.
Rocky, why did you stop racing?
Well,
I know you liked it.
oh, I loved it, but it got so expensive. And if you didn't have money or know somebody had money, you wasn't going to be competitive. And I just got tired of going to the racetrack knowing that I couldn't win. I had no chance of winning when I got there. And so I was driving for Wayne Dukes, and we was down there at Atomic, and all of them had their big haulers, and they'd pull in, jump out of the car, and go up in the haulers, wouldn't talk to you. And I was landing on their open trailer one night, and I told Wayne, I said, I'm not having any fun. He said, I'm broke. And I said, well, let's quit. And we run 2 more races, and I quit. And then about, I guess, 10, 11 years ago, they called me, want me to come down there and Smoky Mountain drive in the Legends race. Oh, this ought to be fun. So I go down there, and I get in this car. God, what's that guy's name? Sweetwater, great guy.
Murphy? Oh,
No, God. Anyway, I get in his car, go out there, and I run about 5 laps. And I thought, man, you got to be in shape to do this because he'll whip me. I thought, I don't know how I run 100 laps because I'm in trouble these 5. And the right rear tire went down on it. And so they got a tire from Mark Vineyard and put on it, and it de-staggered the car. And so when they dropped the green flag race, you couldn't turn that thing left. So I just ran 3 or 4 laps and pulled in, thank goodness. I don't know whether it made the whole 10 or not.
Well, as Cat Style says, if a car won't do it, you can't make it do it.
I tried everything in the world to make that thing turn, and it would not turn. And so I just pulled in.
Do you like to watch racing now?
No.
TV? You don't? No.
I've went to Eldora this past year. That was the only race I was at last year. The year before that, I think I went to Smoky Mountain once. And the year before that, I went to Eldora. That's all.
You ought to get flow racing.
Well,
it's kind of ruined me.
Yeah, but you know, to me, racing's like a drug. You know, if you don't get away from it, you can't. You know,
it's the most addictive thing that I've ever been. That's the only thing I can relate to as an addiction. It really is addictive.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's in your blood. And, you know, I've done it for so long, but now then, you know, we've got a place up on Norris Lake. And I don't hunt or fish, but I like living up there. And then we just bought a place with H.E. and Lisa down in Florida. So we get to go down there 3 or 4 times a year. And so, you know, I found out there's a whole lot more to do than racing that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
You're involved in any kind of motorsports for recreation now at all? I know lots of times when guys stop racing, they get into some other form of racing then.
No, I just,
You know, the cost of racing has got enormous now.
yeah.
And it's getting harder and harder for the everyday Joe to go racing like we used to do.
Right.
What do you think would be a part of the solution to that?
Get rid of the shocks, the tires.
Motor.
Yeah, motor. You know, but you know, that's like years ago when we went to 9-1 motor. It was a good deal.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get somebody that's got a lot of money, they come into the racing and they'll go spend $10,000 to get 2 horsepower.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the main thing. That's like I read an article, Tony Stewart, what's wrong with NASCAR is you go to Bristol on Bristol weekend, motel room's $300 or $400. You go up there this week, it's $89. You know, and he said places are, you know, I got my son a late model after we got through the classics.
Is he still racing now?
No, and we ran 10 races and I was broke. You know, got 2 motors and we couldn't out pasture and been a shock. He didn't hit nothing, luckily. And eventually after a shock, and that cost me $350. You know, and this is back before they started dying on them.
Yeah.
And I finally told him, I said, I'm done. So I quit.
Well, Rocky, it's been super, super nice to have you back again with us.
Well,
And I would like at some point to have you back again, maybe your son too, and have another session with this. And I want to invite you back again.
Be glad to.
You've shared lots of things, brought up lots of names I don't think any of us had heard of in a really long while. And it was good to hear their names mentioned again. They were some of the greats out there, and you guys got to be with them. And again, thank you for being with us.
Thanks
for that.
Yeah.
thank you all. I'll be glad to come back if you want me. So.
I'd like to say too about Rocky, you know, I'd won some sportsman races around here, thought I was ready for atomic, so I went up there in '85 with a super, with a limited motor, thought I was ready for the big time, but I wasn't. And, but Rocky, you know, I was 19 years old, didn't even belong there. Rocky, he treated me like I was somebody, and that's all you ever hear about him and his daddy. That's how good them people are.
Well, Rocky's a great guy.
Class
I
A.
I've enjoyed this session, and want to thank Northfield Vineyard again for allowing us to use their place. And again, folks, if you have got a wedding, a party, any kind of social get-together, give them a call. They've got anything that you might hope for. They've got inside, outside facilities, and the spring's coming up before long. So give them a call for any of your social events. Give them a shot at doing it for you. With that, have a good day. Please watch us and like us on YouTube, and please subscribe to us. That helps keep us alive on YouTube.